Hi, I'm Yinka, and this is The Hurt Locker, a podcast where we open a door into men's mental health. Coming up,
my mental health deteriorated pretty fast. I didn't know at the time, but I was suffering with PTSD. I was self-medicating with alcohol to stop the flashbacks. That led me into a deeper depression. My anxiety got worse. I was having panic attacks.
Set the scene for us for that.
When they say your life flashes before you, it truly does.
You're listening to The Hurt Locker, the podcast that opens a door on men's mental health. And for tonight's guest, we have Stephen Kirby. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm really good. Really, really good. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm busy, but, I'm enthused and good. Yeah, I'm enthused and good, If you don't mind me saying, I know listeners won't be able to see this, but you got a nice smile about you.
Cheers.
You got a nice smile about you. Okay. And before we started recording, you said that, you've had a busy day today.
Yeah, fairly busy. A few meetings, lots of phone calls, lots of work on LinkedIn, and then a bit of shopping.
A bit of shopping. Do you buy anything nice for yourself?
Not for myself, no. It was just literally a food shop. Got a fish pie and some bran flakes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask about the fish pie. What brand?
It's a Morrison's brand. If you've ever had one, they're really, really good.
Is it an extra special one with loads of?
Yeah. It's an extra special.
Okay. There are other fish pies out there for the listeners as well. We're just going to say this now, okay? So, Stephen, welcome to The Hurt Locker. We're going to dive in, and I'm going to ask you, what's in your hurt locker?
My hurt locker is fairly empty now at the moment. But I was involved in an accident 13 years ago at work, and at the time, I was 32, but we didn't talk about mental health 13 years ago like we do today. So there was depression and all that type of stuff. But if somebody told me they was depressed, I was the guy telling them to man up and get on with it. It's all in your head. It's just man up, basically. And then after the accident, my mental health deteriorated pretty fast. I didn't know at the time, but I was suffering with PTSD. I was self-medicating with alcohol to stop the flashbacks. That led me into a deeper depression. My anxiety got worse. I was having panic attacks. And I sunk really, really, really low into a really dark place relatively fast.
Thank you for sharing that. And we're going to go into some detail, if it's all right with you, about the accident in of itself. But for the benefits again of listeners, tell me about you. Tell me about growing up. Where were you born? Where were you raised? What was the family situation for you?
So I'm from Hull, if you can tell by the accent. I'm from Hull. Council estate, probably one of the worst council estates in Hull, Preston Road, anyone listening. My mum and dad got divorced when I was 10. So from the age of 10, it was me, my mum, my little sister was a couple of years younger. I had to grow up really, really fast. In my mind, I was the man of the house. My dad had gone. I had to look after my mum and my sister. We didn't have much. We struggled. Mum tried to work as much as she could. But yeah, it was relatively tough, like for most of us as a kid, growing up around the estate, getting into trouble. And I think that's where, when I said, like, at the age of 32, I was the guy telling people to man up and get on with it. Because of my upbringing, you had to be physically and mentally tough from where I was from. Because if you wasn't, other kids took advantage of you. You know what I mean? You'd get bullied, you'd get your football took off you, you'd get your bike took off you. So you had to be tough, mentally and physically. Like growing up as well, like my mum and my dad had a very toxic relationship. So there was a lot of domestic violence and fighting and stuff like that. So I witnessed a lot as a kid as well. And I think a lot of that I carried with me into my teens. And that's probably where a lot of my frustration and anger came from during my teenage years. I was a bit of a shit in my teenage years.
Okay. Something you said right at the beginning was your dad left when you were 10, younger sister, mum, and you became the man of the house. Was that something that was fostered onto you, or was that something that this is what males, the eldest male in the house does?
Yeah, I think that's all it was. Like literally, from even at the age of 10, I kind of had my head screwed on a little bit, and it was just for me that was the role that you took. I mean, I had to look after my sister, I had to look after my mum, and yeah, I took on that role. My dad was still about. We still saw him like every weekend and stuff like that. It wasn't like he just disappeared and he was gone. But yeah, it was something. It wasn't forced onto me. It was just, to me, I think it was just that was the norm. That was how I felt it was supposed to be.
And so, obviously, you're in school and that. How was that adjustment made then when you were in school, when your dad's no longer there? When your dad left, was there a relaxed atmosphere at home?
Yeah, there was definitely a more relaxed atmosphere because the fights weren't happening and all that type of stuff. But as for school, I didn't go to school that often. Like even primary school, I was always off sick. And then my first year of secondary school, I came down with meningitis, and I had meningitis. I was in hospital for a while. I ended up missing the majority of like year 7. And then when I did go back to school, I hated that school. And I remember actually cutting myself with a bread knife. I still have the scar under my toe. I cut myself because I didn't want to go to school. And then my mum let me stay off. I think I had the rest of that year off until she got me into another school. So, yeah, and I was never a big fan of school.
Can I ask, in terms of your mum, your sister's there and so, what was your relationship like with your mum?
Our relationship with my mum's always been really, really good. I mean, she's always done the best she could, even as like when we was kids. She always there for us. Probably discipline wasn't there, and that's why I didn't go to school, and I'd go and do what I wanted and come in when I wanted, because I didn't get disciplined. I had no one telling me what I could and couldn't do. But relationship wise, my mum is an amazing woman. She always has been.
Tell me, what made her amazing?
She's just got a massive heart. She's there. Even everything that she's ever gone through, growing up, through like her childhood and stuff, she's a really, really strong woman. And I took a lot of that from her. I think I'm the man I am today because of my mum.
Okay, and we'll come back to that in a bit. Tell me a little bit about your sister and your relationship with her.
Again, sister, there's only a couple of years difference between us. Always had a really good relationship. Never, when we was young kids, we'd squabble and fight, but we've never once fallen out. Like from our teens to now, I'm 45 now, she's 43, and we've never fallen out once. We're always there for each other.
So you'd say you're close then?
Yeah, definitely close. I've also, like, my dad went on to have another child later on in life. So I've now got a brother as well, half brother. I think he's about 24, 23, 24. And yeah, got a good relationship with him as well.
Okay. So you said that you saw your father at weekends and that. Did he take an interest, or did he offer a form of structure and discipline for you?
He took an interest. He wasn't very good. He was always in and out of work himself and stuff. So when it came to providing for us, I'm guessing there was a lot of struggles on his side. But other than that, is never. My dad he'd never raised his hand to us. never really shouted at us or anything like that. It was just the toxic relationship was between my mum and my dad. Us as kids, we witnessed that, but there was never any of it aimed towards us. So yeah, got even like now to this day, I've got a great relationship with my dad as well. My mum and my dad, like my mum's married, my dad's been in relationships, but he's single out now. But they even get along. They'll talk. You know, like we'll go to barbecues and family events, and they both get along, and it's good all around now.
Okay, good. When you said you bore witness to the toxicity in the family and that, did that ever make you afraid?
We was afraid as kids. We was afraid knowing that dad had gone. If he didn't come in after work when you had gone to pub, and then we'd know that when he gets in, there'd be a fight or there'd be an argument. Okay. Also, if mum and dad went out together on a Saturday night or something, more often than not, there was going to be fight. There was going to be arguing by the time they got home. Okay. So there was that kind of fear there, that anticipation, knowing that it was going to kick off. But other than that, like never afraid of either mum or dad or all like
that. Okay. And so he leaves home. You're the man of the house. What was that? Was that you kicking back then? I make my own rules moving forward. You're smiling now.
Yeah, basically, well, like I said, there was no discipline. I remember my mum, on one occasion, I think she told me I was grounded when I was about 13 because I was being cheeky. So I went in my bedroom and put my music on full blast and shut my door. And within 10 minutes, she was like, "Stephen, get out." So that was the one time I think I got grounded. But other than that, looking back, I've got a 17-year-old lad now, and he's got his head screwed on. He don't go around town or all that. I don't go drinking. I was in Hull Town Centre when I was 16 with a fake ID, like out every weekend. Like even going out with £5 in my pocket just to be able to get a few drinks.
Yeah.
And mixing with like wrong people and stuff. But yeah, it's looking back to where I was back then. I think I grew up fairly too quick in a way.
What, looking back then, would you say you were craving anything?
See, I've gone through this and I've had therapy after my accident.
And this is not a therapy session.
No. But at the time, I didn't see it, like I didn't ever think that. But looking back now, I probably did need my dad more than every other weekend. And I needed discipline. And I didn't have that discipline. So I was out on the council estate riding on. I'd never pinch anything in my life, but I had friends who twok a motorbike, and then I'd go and take it off them and have a go. So I was riding around the streets of the council estate on motorbikes and shit like that. As it still happens today.
Of course.
And there was no one there. I was really lucky because I never got in trouble with the police, even though I did a lot of stuff that a lot of teenagers do on the estates, and I got into a lot of fights. But back then, there was no worry of anybody carrying a knife or anything. It wasn't.
Yeah,
there was no knife. Yeah. It was just you got in a fight, you sorted it out, and that was the end of it. Whereas nowadays, it's a bit more scary.
It is. But tell me about the fighting malarkey, because sometimes some people, they can go one of two ways, as it were, engage in battles and not be seen as backing down, because otherwise that goes wildfire across the estate. Stephen's back down, or don't mess with him, because it doesn't matter if you can beat you or not, he'll stand up to you.
Yeah, see, at school, I only got in a few fights at school. But I was boxing for a local boxing club for a little bit. Just never went amateur out. It was just training and sparring with the lads. And then I started throwing weights about when I was 16. And again, I kind of genetically bulked up pretty quick. And then if I'd got into fights, it was never that I wasn't the type of person to just start a fight. It was always somebody'd have a go, so I won't back down. You know what I mean? It was simple as that.
Did you gain a reputation?
A little bit. A lot of people in the area knew who I was. Like, everyone used to just call me Kirby. And a lot of people knew of me, like through school, through after school, around town. As I got a bit older, I used to get in fights with doormen a lot in the pubs. Like, I was out at 16, round town at 16. And they'd let all these underage girls, it was obvious there was like 15. I knew some of them, and they wouldn't even get asked for ID. But yeah, me and my mates had tried getting in, and they'd be like, "No, lad, sorry, you're not coming in." And then I'd lose it, and then I'd end up getting in fights with doormen, and then eventually I got banned from the town centre in Hull, which, looking back now, I can't believe it. It's a different me.
Okay. You said you didn't attend school that much. So what were your dreams? What were your aspirations? 15, 16, 17?
I never knew. And one thing that I used to always say was, I'm going to be a police officer. Even though I'd gone down the path I'd gone down and been in trouble I'd been in, I asked for the pack. You had to get like an application pack. And I got the pack 3 times, but I never filled it all in. So it never happened. But that was the only... I didn't have no goals. Nobody spoke to me about setting goals or career-wise or where I could end up. So I nearly joined the army at 17, 18, because I didn't see anything else. So I thought, I'm just going to join the army. And I went to Army Careers. And there was an infantry guy there and a guy from the Coldstream Guards. And they both kind of came at me and wanted me to join their regiments. And at the time, Nigel Benn was massive, and he was in the Guards. And the guy from the Coldstream Guards was like, "Look, once a week you get to do sport. If you're into boxing, we can help advance your career." And he really sold it to me. So I was going to join. I started training. I started running. And then the day I was supposed to go to Scotland for my medical and my fitness and whatnot. And one of my friend's older brothers found out, and he rang the house phone. He was like, what do you mean you're going in the army? And I was like, well, there's nothing else. He said, "Do you not?" He said, you're not going in. And he used to look out for me a little bit. And he was like, "Look," he said, "leave it with me." He said, "I'll get you a job at our place." And he got me a job in caravan place where he worked, caravan manufacturing place. And at the time, it was like £320 a week, which at
a lot of money.
Yeah, just turning 18, it was good money. So I sacked off going into the army, went and did this job. That lasted about 4 weeks, and then I got laid off.
Oh, God. But on that point, though, and there was something that I observed then, if you don't mind me saying, your mate, and your words were, he was helping you.
Yeah, he was looking out for me.
You put your head down when you said that.
Right, yeah. It's like I said, I had people looking out for me. But again, a big part of me regrets not going into the army, because I think that would have really suited who I am and my character, and what. Right. But at the same time, I believe everything happens for a reason.
100%.
Everything happens for a reason, and obviously I wasn't supposed to go in. And if I had have gone in, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today, which I'm living my best life. I don't actually feel like I work.
Absolutely. So, and just on that point, not to labour it too much, why was your friend the one looking out for you? Why was he objecting to you joining the army?
Because he said that at the time, I think Iraq was going on, like the first time or whatnot.
Yeah.
And it was all getting pretty bad out there. And he just said, "You'll be cannon fodder. You're not going." You know, he said, "There's no need to go." Do you know what I mean? You're just putting yourself at risk, and just took me out of it. So I kind of wanted to do it that bad, or I wouldn't have listened to him. But
Absolutely. And that person, you know, they cared that much that they reached out, that they found the house and all of that. How did that feel for you? Somebody caring for you?
yeah, at the time, I probably didn't even think much about it. But looking back in later years, it's like, again, that's why I smiled as well. It's looking back, there was people looking out for me. So, which is always nice to know.
Definitely. So tell me, you get laid off the 4 weeks in the caravan factory. What next for you?
Next for me was, I wasn't actually doing nothing, and then one of my other mates was going for an interview to work in a casino,
Okay.
and we was going out straight after. So the interview was like in the afternoon, and then we was going to go on the piss straight after. So he's all kind of suited for this interview, and I turned up in a pair of ripped jeans and a tight t-shirt, and I had curtains at the time down to my chin, and I turned up with him, and there was about 50 people, no, maybe more, maybe about 100 people turned up, and there was doing like a mass interview, like 3 at a time, to be a croupier. And I'd never been in a casino before then, and this one of the pit bosses come over to me and said, "Look, what are you here for?" So I said, "I'm just with my mate. I'm waiting for him." He said, "Don't you want to be a croupier?" And I was like, "What's one of them?" And then he explained it to me, and I was like, "Nah." And he said, it can be really good money. And I said, "Well, I'm not dressed like everybody was dressed for an interview. I was in ripped jeans and a t-shirt." He was like, "Just put your name down and go for an interview anyhow." So I thought, why not? So I went and sat through this interview, answered a lot of maths questions and whatnot. And then I got a phone call the following night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I got a phone call saying, "Congratulations, you've been invited to the training school." So I ended up doing 6 weeks training to be a croupier, and then became a croupier.
Okay. Okay. And how was that world for you? Given the fact you'd never been inside the casino.
No, again, it was good, and you saw some amazing things. Like, I remember once I got on the tables, like I give one guy like 15 grand in 2 minutes, and it was like, wow. I mean, you can really win that much. But the hours was ridiculous. Like, you do double shifts, so you'd start at 12 in the afternoon and finish at 6 in the morning.
Wow.
Go home to bed for a few hours, and then you had to be back at 1 o'clock in the afternoon again. And after I think I did about 3 months, and then I was like, I woke up one afternoon. I'd done the night shift. Woke up in the afternoon. My mum said, "Are you at work?" I said, "No, I ain't going." And she was like, "What do you mean you're not going?" I was like, I'm not going. It's not for me." And I ended up just sacking it off.
Okay.
But,
I mean, I'm thinking working in a casino, you would have seen the highs and lows.
I remember on a few occasions, I've seen people win like 10 grand and then be back the next day crying because they've lost it all. Like, the following evening.
Yeah.
I remember I was dealing blackjack to one guy. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he was like, "Mate, it's my last £5." So I was like, "Right." So I said, "Why don't you use it then to get a taxi and go home?" And he said, "I can't. I need to win." He said, "I need to win my money back, or my wife's going to divorce me." He said, "She's warned me loads and loads of times." And he was literally crying, saying, "Mate, please let me win." And I was like, "I can't let you win. It's all on the cards." And I ended up dealing, and he lost his last father, and the bouncers had to drag him out crying. So that guy, who knows what happened to him? You know, he might have gone through a divorce or whatever because of his gambling. So I've seen the highs and the lows when it comes to that not just that kind of world, but when it comes to addictions.
Okay. And I suppose, well, I'm asking you, has that always been a mirror of sorts to say, I'm not going to go down that route? I'm not going to get into gambling?
Yeah. Gambling has never been a big thing for me. because of that, like you say, because I've witnessed it and I've seen it. There's professional gamblers that was going in there, and that was all they did was gamble. And some of them would be quite successful, but the majority of them wasn't. And I've seen people who believe that they're gonna win big. Like even now, I know people, some of my clients who I work with. It's like I just need that one big win, I'll be all right. But it's not that win that they're chasing; it's that dopamine fix. It's that feel good.
100%. So you sacked that. You're no longer a croupier. Where are you going? I'm going through this chronologically. You can see that now, can't you?
Yeah, no, it's good.
I don't usually, but I don't know, for some reason now we're building up here.
Yeah, no, it's good. So again, I was out of work. I went and worked in a timber yard for about a year, up until I was about 20, after the croupier thing. And that place ended up selling out and shut down, so it was all kind of made redundant. And then I was fortunate that some of my family worked on a local site for a demolition firm. So where I'm from in Hull, there's BP chemical sites. It's a massive site. Right. And a lot of it was being demolished. And my uncle got in touch and said, I can get you a job on here as a labourer, but you've got to stick to it, because I was known for just wanting to go out and do my own thing. So I was like, yeah, I will. And
okay, so before you continue, I'm wondering, do people know you as being uncommitted, a little bit flaky?
I was just known as party boy. Don't know when you...
okay, party boy. Okay.
I was party boy. That's all I wanted to do, was just be happy and live my own life. Like, didn't want to go out and have to work at 8-10 hours a day. But the only ways of doing that, obviously, with no other qualifications and not working, is selling drugs. And that was something I never wanted to get into.
Okay. What's the offer there?
Oh yeah, the offer was there many times. I never classed myself as selling drugs, but looking back now, I was really silly as a teenager. And because a lot of people knew me, back then in like the late 90s, it was all ecstasy.
Yeah.
And I knew people, and people would say, "Oh, can you get us a pill and I'll meet you in the club?" And they'd give me the money, and I'd end up going and getting a load of pills, say a pocket full of pills.
Yeah.
But I didn't see myself as a dealer at the time. That's how naive I was and young, and I just thought I was helping people out. So I remember one night, it was a Saturday night, and we was going to a club, and I'd left the pub and I was talking to this girl. I didn't know her. She just got talking to me. And I had about 16 ecstasy pills in my pocket to go and hand out once I got in the club. And she was like, "Okay, come here and talk to me." And I was like, "No, I've got to go." And she was like, "No, just talk to me." And she was waiting for a taxi. And I stood with her talking to her for about 10 minutes. And then when I walked around the corner to go to the club, it was getting raided. But even people within the vicinity of, I don't know, within about 200 yards, police was just stopping everybody and grabbing them and searching them. And I was just outside of that area. And I know people I know one kid who he only had 6 pills in his pocket, and he got arrested with intent to supply and ended up getting a couple of years, I think. I had 16 on me. And if that girl hadn't stopped me, I'd have ended up being in the middle of it all. So again, really, really lucky. And as I said, I think everything happens for a reason. But that was a lesson, because I've binned them all and never carried out like that on me ever again.
It's funny you should mention the lady, because I'm looking at you for the benefits of listeners again, and I'm seeing you as a bit of a ladies' man as well.
Hey, I'm a married man. I'm a good boy. Yeah,
but back in the day.
Back in the day, I was a bit of a tart. So
you're a bit of a tart. Okay. That's honest. That's a fair admission. Kirby the tart. Okay. So, okay, a life lesson, another crossroad for you. What then?
Then that was when I ended up getting into demolition. Started off as a labourer. So it was just like all the crappy jobs, clearing up, stuff like that. And then I really wanted to get in a 360. I wanted to get in a machine because it looked fun. And just before I got into that, they worked me up. So I ended up working on a crusher for a while, crushing concrete. I then got my loading shovel ticket, ended up loading the crusher rather than being stood on the crusher. And then I think it was after about 2 years, I got my 360 ticket, my excavator ticket. And that was it. I was happy. I was a 360 driver. I was getting sent all over the country doing different jobs. And yeah, it that was when it hit me, and it was what I wanted to do. It was my career. I'd actually found something that I enjoyed.
Okay. So what you've landed on your feet.
Yeah.
You're smiling again. Every time I say little bits and pieces, you're always smiling there.
No, it's like when I was born, going right back to the beginning, I was nearly 7 weeks early. And the doctor told my mum to prepare herself for the worst because I'm probably not going to pull through. But I only weighed like 4 pounds, but I did. And then when I was like 2, I had whooping cough and croup, and I was in hospital. And again, they said it's really bad. And then at 11, or just nearly 11, I got meningitis, which there's different forms of meningitis. And like I had the viral infection, I think. And when I spoke to the consultant after I'd been cleared, he said, "Do you know how much of a lucky boy you are?" And he said, "Kids who have the infection you had, you can lose your limbs and also like die." Yeah. He said, "For you to walk away absolutely clear and well," he said, it's a miracle. So again, like you just said, being lucky. I've been lucky, touch wood, all my life.
So there's you. Thanks for sharing that. So where's you traveling up and down the country, money in your back ass pocket, life's good. You got good people around you, yeah. You got the same mates from school and that, or have you got different mates now?
No, I think I'd moved on at that point from anyone that I hung around with at like school times, after school. And again, I got in a bit of bother. I think I was about 17. I got in a fight with a lad who had a bit of a reputation after going into this youth club. And there was a big gang of them, like there was kind of a bit notorious, everyone knew him. And I got the better of him. And then one of the other lads ran off for it. When I said earlier about knives and stuff, one of the other lads started running. I was like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I'm off to get a knife." And he only lived like near where that was. And me and my mate ended up running. But they all lived in the same area, Bilton Grange, like part of East Hull. And then I just stopped going around there because it wasn't worth the risk, because I knew there was a lot of people after me. So I kind of became a bit distant from like everyone I hung about with at that time. And started hanging around with workmates and new people. And when I got into demolition, I was away 5 nights a week most of the time. And sometimes I'd stay weekend and work weekend. So I was away a lot for a fair bit of time.
So, and what was that like for you, being up and down the country, seeing new things, being exposed to new ways of living and new areas?
Yeah, it was good. It was like I said, I sat in pub every night though. I didn't see out from it because the money I was earning, you was living in a pub, you was in digs. So you'd finish work and you'd be sat in pub every night. With that, so a lot of the lads had a bit of a coke problem, and then they kind of got me having a go, and then every weekend it was, right, I'm gonna get 3 bags of sniff, and so I went down that path. And life was good looking back. I ended up getting in a relationship when I was about 21. She was in Hull, I was working away, but we went on to buy a house, and it was good, but I was away all the time, so it wasn't great for the relationship.
Okay. So fast forward then. At the beginning, you spoke about the man you've become now as a result of your accidents. Set the scene for us for that.
So again, I'm working back in Hull. I'm now 32, working for a different company. I'd been in demolition for 8 years, working away. And then I got with my ex, with Katie, when I was about 27, got her pregnant, and Harry was born, my son. And she already had a little boy who I took on as my own because his dad wasn't around. So I had 2 kids, and I found a job close to home, and I'd been on that site for a number of years. And then at the age of 32 was when my life took another major change. So the kids was 4 and 8. Harry was 4, Joe was 8. I got up that morning with the boys, with Katie. We got them ready for school and nursery. I gave them a kiss. I said, right, I'm off to work. I'll see you tonight. It was just after Christmas, first week back. It was thick snow. It was icy. It was really cold, horrible day. And I got in my car, said, see you later. Went to work. The job we'd been doing was putting a new high-pressure fire hydrant system for part of this plant what was being built. So it was underground pipe work. It was 600 mil wide, so it was big, thick pipe. We'd installed 60 metres of it before Christmas. And then when I got to work, we was told, before I can dig the next trench out for the next section, that section has to be hydrostatic pressure tested. I didn't even know what a hydrostatic pressure test was. I had no training in it, never seen it, never heard of it. 5 of us in the team. Instead of getting a specialist team to come and do this test, they couldn't get one because it was so soon after Christmas. So they ended up bringing a guy in from the agency to overlook it. It's some competent guy. He had a street works card. And it sounded really, really straightforward. All we had to do was fill this pipe with water and then put a pump on it and pressurize it up to 28 bar of pressure. So it's got, you can imagine 60 meters of pipe and then like a spigot end, like a big plug for the end of the pipe. That spigot end weighed 460 kilogram, and that gets fastened into the end of the pipe. So it's a big chunk of steel with a big flange on.
Yeah.
24 nuts and bolts around the flange. And the guy started pressurizing it. I was sat in my machine. I'm a typical digger driver. There's nothing for me to do. It's cold, it's snowing. So I got in my machine, turned the heaters on, and just sat there ready to go to sleep until these guys were sorted. And then after about an hour, I heard one of the guys say, it's leaking. And basically the flange water had started trickling out. So this guy, this experienced, competent guy said, right, get in there and tighten up the nut and bolt where it's leaking. So these 2 young lads jumped in the trench, tightened up the nut and the bolt, gets out, turns the pump back on. An hour or so later, it starts leaking again at 5 bar of pressure, different area. Then gets to lunchtime, it's at 10 bar of pressure and it started leaking again. The guys was about to go back in, and what we're told on site all the time is if something doesn't feel right, stop the job. So something just didn't feel right with me. Something was just, I knew something was wrong. So I said to the guys, don't go back in the trench. Before you go back in there, somebody go to the office, have a word with the manager and just let him know what we're doing and what's happening. Tell him it's leaked at 3 bar, 5 bar. It's now leaking at 10 bar. So one of the guys gets in the works van, goes to the office on site, told the manager exactly that. He just said, what's John said? That's the guy who they brought in. And he said, he said to just keep tightening it. So he went on to a website to have a look at the pressures and whatnot. And he said, no, it can't go anywhere. Just go and carry on doing what you're doing. So the guy came back. He said, it's absolutely fine. It can't go nowhere. Just carry on. So the guys got in and tightened it up. It then got to 2 minutes past 3 in the afternoon, and it's dark nights. We normally pack up at about 3:45 to go home. And I heard one of the guys say, for fuck's sake, it's leaking again. And it was at 18 bar of pressure. And I knew it had taken us all day to get to 18 bar. We still had another 10 bar of pressure to go. So in my mind, it was like, we're going to be here till 8 o'clock tonight. I don't want to be here till 8 o'clock tonight. I want to go home. I've been sat here all day doing that. I'm not working overtime. So in my mind, I thought, I knew I was physically stronger than these young lads. I'd been bodybuilding since I was 16. I was probably about 16 stone at the time. I wasn't being gung-ho or anything. I just knew that I could get in there and I could tighten up all 24 nuts and bolts around that flange. So I gets out the machine. I said to the guys, passes the spanners, give us you had to wear a rescue harness to go in the trench. I said, give us your harness. I'm going to go and do it. They all started laughing. They was like, go on, Fatty. They used to call me Fatty. Go on, Fatty, you do it. Go and get it done. So I put the harness on. As I stood on the ladder to enter the trench, I passed the spanners back to one of the other lads. I entered the trench. And then as I reached up to get the spanners again, the end blew off. But I didn't know the end had blown off. So I remember reaching up for the spanners. My next memory is I'm trapped underwater. I don't know where I am. I woke up underwater. I thought I was in the local river. I thought I was in the Humber. I couldn't get up. It was like being in a washing machine. I was getting thrown about. So basically, 18 bar of pressure that water was at. And in that 60 meters is about 7,000 gallons of water. When the end's blown off, that water is all gushed out towards at the end of the trench. Now, if that end of that pipe had have hit me, it would have cut me in half. Like I said, it weighed about 460 kilograms. It actually, my digger arm was in the trench and it hit the spigot end, hit the excavator bucket, and it moved the arm to the end of the trench. There's that much force in it, but somehow it missed me. The pipe was 600 millimeters wide and the trench was only 120. So there's not a lot of room in there. I'm 16 stone. But yeah, as I've reached for the spanners, the end's blown off. Looking back now, I must have been thrown in the air because my boots was found 20 feet away on another part of the site. So the amount of pressure that's gone through my body to blow my boots off must have been a fair bit. And I must have been quite high for him to go as far as it did. But obviously I was unconscious at that point. I've then landed back in the trench. The water's filled the trench and I've been trapped underwater. So yeah, I was trapped for, looking like I now know I was trapped for about a minute, which a minute doesn't sound like a long time, but a minute drowned in, trapped in your own mind, believing you're going to die. When they say your life flashes before you, it truly does. Like, as I said, Harry was 4, Joe was 8. I remember screaming, I'm not religious, but I was praying to God, please, 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 I can't leave my kids. I can't die. I can't leave my boys.
Was that your first thought?
That's what I remember. That's my favorite. Thinking back, that's the one thing that sticks out in my mind. Is I was praying to God, please, 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 I can't die. I can't leave my kids. And I remember also physically screaming out for my mum, like proper shouting out for my mum. But other than that, like I say, a lot of it's just a blur. I was in and out of consciousness. But the water, everything seemed to stop. I thought I was fighting to get out, but I wasn't. I was just laid face down. And one of the young lads jumped in the trench. When it blew, they all ran different directions to protect themselves because there was a lot of water and a big bang.
Yeah.
So they'd all kind of turned and ran. Then young Jordan was only 18. He was in the trench before me. He turned around and saw me laid face down in the water. So he jumped into the trench and he lifted me up. Now, my harness and my boiler suit had been blown clean off my shoulders with a blast. But as he lifted me up, everyone in the area, in the work area who heard it, came running across to see what's happened. And I remember looking up and everybody screaming at me and shouting, Kirby, breathe, fucking breathe. But I'd swallowed that much water, I couldn't breathe. And I'm looking at everybody and I'm thinking, somebody please do something. Like, even though I was out, I was still drowning. And nobody knew what to do. And then as Jordan passed me out of the trench and the other guys dragged me out, the water dislodged and I was able to get my breath.
Did he save your life?
Probably. Like, who knows how much longer I could have been in there for, no? Like, and how much, I think, basically what I've been told now by people who understand these kind of pressure test systems and how it works is nobody survives them. You know, like I got into speaking at companies all over the UK because another company had a fatality that same year. Pipe failed at 3 bar and the guy died instantly because it hit him.
At 3 bar?
It failed at 3 bar of pressure and he died instantly.
But we're talking about yours was at 18, wasn't
18 bar. So 18 bar is the equivalent, I now know, of almost 53 ton pushing against that end. So it's like 53 ton trying to push it off. That's how much pressure was in there. So when we said earlier about me being lucky, going back to from the very beginning to there, I am a very, very lucky man. Very lucky man.
You mentioned PTSD, etc. I'm assuming straight after ambulance came, took you to hospital, they explained to the consultant what had happened, etc., etc.
No, that's where it gets a bit more murky, and that's what I talk about with businesses. So from the very beginning, I think the company knew that they weren't going to get the HSE involved. It was going to be covered up. So the site had their own on-site.
Whoa. Slow down, rewind.
Going from there, so the site have their own on-site ambulance and their own medical centre. But that ambulance can't leave site. What happened was the guys got me laid on the floor next to my machine. They stripped me half naked because it's fixed now, it's icy. I'd been trapped under ice cold water. They're trying to warm me up with jackets. The emergency ambulance comes out. He looked at me, and basically injury-wise, again, I was lucky. My arms had blown, so my elbows had gone backwards and tore all the tendons in my arms. My arms had hyperextended. I had a cut in my head, which needed a few stitches in the back of my head. I had pipe bedding, so I had gravel stuck in my face, my head, my shoulders, like shrapnel where it had blown at me.
Yeah.
My feet and my legs was just absolutely battered by the pressures what had hit me. But physically, and I had like an airline fracture just above my top lip. But other than that, physically, I was battered and bruised, but I was really lucky. But the ambulance turns up, the on-site ambulance. I don't remember all this exactly. They looked at me and asked if I was all right, which obviously I wasn't. And then they went over and checked out the site to see what had gone wrong. And then there was on the site radios explaining to somebody else what had happened. They got me back in the ambulance, flashing lights, sirens through the site to the medical centre, stripped me completely naked, and then they realised they didn't have no clothes that had fit me and they didn't have a blanket. So they put me in a paper suit, an hazmat suit. So it was a see-through paper suit, and they put a work coat on me. They then put a gauze on my head to stop the bleeding, like a bandage on my head, cleaned me up a little bit, got me back in the ambulance. I thought I was then going to A&E, to hospital, but they took me with sirens and flashing lights, and then 2 minutes later, they stopped, and I was in the car park, and they took me out of their ambulance, put me into a colleague's car, and told him to take me to the local estate, to the minor injuries unit, to get my head stitched up.
I'm speechless.
So basically gets me in his car. He's nudging me and telling me to stay awake. Like we're really good friends now. He's telling me to stay awake. We'll get to the minor injuries. He sits me down in the reception area. He goes to speak to the guy on reception and said he needs stitches in the back of his head. But he didn't realise how bad it was. He was just like, yeah, I'll get a nurse. Half an hour later, a nurse came through and nudged me, and James said, what's happened? She said, you look like you've been beat up by 10 men. So James said, as work not rang up, he's been involved in an accident at work. And they said, no, nobody's rang up. We didn't know nothing, otherwise we'd have seen him. And she assessed me and she said, I can't help you. You need to be at hospital. You need to be at A&E. Said, you need x-rays, you need scans, you need
Absolutely.
everything. So she was going to get me an ambulance. And then James said, by the time an ambulance gets to the estate, I could have him in the centre of town in my car. I've got him this far. So she says that's all right after a bit of persuasion, carries me back into the car because I couldn't walk. I could stand up and I could shuffle, but I couldn't walk. So they gets me back in the car. We end up getting stuck in traffic on the way to A&E. While we're sat in traffic, the manager from site rings James's phone and said, what's happening? He said, oh, minor injuries, can't help. We've got to go to A&E. His words were, for fuck's sake, make sure you're both on site tomorrow.
What the?
So I then get to hospital. The accident happened just after 3 o'clock. I got to Hull Royal Infirmary at about 6:30. So it was a good while after the accident. They stitched me up, they cleaned me up, they got all the pipe bedding out, all the gravel out my face. They assessed me. It got to about 11:30 at night, and they was trying to find me a bed. Because I drowned and because I'd been unconscious, they said I had to stay in because they observed me, make sure I was fine.
Patients, yes.
But all I wanted to do was get home to my boys. My kids knew that I'd been in an accident, and I just wanted to get home. So I ended up discharged. I said, look, I'll come back. If I start feeling more poorly, I'll come back. And they gave me a prescription for some really strong painkillers. And then my dad came and picked me up. And I ended up getting home after midnight that night. And I couldn't move my arms. My arms was kind of stuck in that kind of position, just folded. Couldn't straighten them back out. But I laid with my two boys until they fell asleep because I just wanted them to know that Dad was all right and he was home. But it was when I went to bed and tried to sleep, that's when the PTSD had already kicked in. I didn't know because I didn't understand PTSD back then. But I closed my eyes, and when I eventually fell asleep, all of us, as soon as I went into a sleep, I was back in that trench underwater.
You were reliving, yeah.
I was the smells, the bubbles, everything about it. I was screaming to God. That's why I remember that bit so vividly, because I dreamt about it so often, when I relived it. And I'm screaming to God, please, 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 I can't die. I can't leave my kids. And then Katie, the boy's mum, my partner at the time, woke me up and she said, you're having a nightmare. And I was having a full-on panic attack. I couldn't breathe. She got me a glass of water. She calmed me down. A couple of hours later, I tried to go to sleep again, and the exact same thing happened again. Like every time I fell asleep, I just relived it. Then going back to the non-reporting part, I didn't sleep hardly. The next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock at the door, and it was one of the guys from work. And he said, "Steve, are you all right?" I was like, "No, I can't move. I'd seized up everywhere." I said, "I'm in agony." He said, "Oh, you've got to come on site to give a statement." I said, I can't walk. He said, "Don't worry, I'll help you, but you've got to come on site to give a statement." Ended up getting me in the work minibus, getting me to site, swiping me in. The director came over and said, "I'm really sorry this has happened, Steve, and I'm sorry to drag you in, but we need a statement." So I said, "Well, can I give it? Because I want to go home because I haven't slept. I feel I'm not in a good place." And he said, "No, I need to speak to the other 5 guys first. Then I'll speak to you. It'll be about dinner time." Now, looking back at that now, they was just keeping me on site so they didn't have a lost time incident on their hand.
Absolutely.
So
Didn't the penny drop for you that they were just covering their own tracks?
No, I don't even think it crossed my mind. To me, we just had Christmas. We lived week to week. We had no savings.
Yeah.
I needed my job. There was a lot of layoffs before the Christmas period. I was one of the lucky ones that stayed, and I needed my job. So I did whatever they said because I felt I was going to end up losing my job. I didn't think of anything else. So I'd gone into site, and then I fell asleep in an office, and one of the supervisors saw me and he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, they've told me I've got to come in to give a statement." He said, "Yeah, I bet they have." He said, "Come on." He said, "Get in my van. I'm taking you home." And then he took me back home, and they ended up coming to my house for a statement, the client and the contractor. And then they sent an occupational nurse to my house to assess me. And she said, this was on the Thursday. The accident was on the Tuesday. On the Thursday, the nurse came and she said, these want me to say that you're going to be back at work on Monday. She said, but I can tell you now, you're not going to be back for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
And she was right. I was off work for 7 months. But I was under physio. I was under mental health hospital. I was having therapy. So yeah, it was bad.
Stephen, there's so much to this. There is so bloody much to this.
The PTSD had kicked in, but I didn't understand PTSD. So my mental health deteriorated massively. I then started, as soon as I got back from work that day and sat down, I said to Katie, get us a beer out the fridge. And she said, you can't drink. You're on the strongest painkillers that the hospital could give you. You can't drink on them. I was like, I'll be all right. I need a drink. So she got me one after a bit of arguing. That one can ended up being about 10, whatever was left. The following day, it was whatever spirits was left from Christmas. The day after, I was sending Katie out to get cheap bottles of cider. And then that carried on. Then we didn't know where the money was coming from because I was off work. So I was getting my mum to drop me some drink off and groceries and help us out. But the more I drank, I've drank all my life from about the age of 14 at that point. Never thought I had a problem with drink, but I've used it as a coping mechanism. And
you were self-medicating.
I was self-medicating. But as I was self-medicating, the flashbacks was getting worse. Even the smell of water, if Katie turned a tap on in the kitchen, we only lived in like a 2-bedroom house. She turned the tap on, I could smell the water.
Absolutely.
And I'd start shaking and I'd tell myself, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know, like, because I didn't understand why I was the way I was.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is wrong with you? But like I said, going back towards the beginning, I was the guy telling people to man up. It's all in your head. And then I started feeling this way. And then I've never laid a finger on my kids either. But like I said earlier on about my dad. But I remember Harry coming to jump on me. It was a few weeks after the accident. And I'd been drinking. I hadn't been sleeping. I had all sorts of thoughts going through my head. And as he went to jump on me, I pushed him away and said, fuck off, go to your mum. And he went off crying. And George sat playing with his toys, doing nothing. And I was like, you, get all them clear, get them cleared up, get them put away. And I'd just kicking off for no reason. And then I'd go and sit in the toilet and cry to myself thinking, why am I being like this? What is wrong with me? And I'd sit and cry for probably about 5 minutes, splash my face, walk out, and Katie'd say, are you all right? And I smiled and went, yeah, of course I am. I'm dealing with it. I wasn't dealing with it. I was broken. But I didn't want to admit to her or anybody else that I wasn't dealing with it.
Why not?
Because looking back at that time, I just had to man up. That's what I always tell people: man up, get on with it. And that's I didn't want her to know that I was struggling because that would then make her worry. But I know now, looking back, she knew there was something wrong and she was worrying anyhow. And I wasn't being me no more. I'd fell out with my mum. Katie had told my mum to stop getting me drink.
Yeah.
She said he's drinking too much. And I said to my mum, if you're not going to help me out, then don't come and see the boys because you're not seeing them. I was using emotional blackmail because I wasn't getting what I wanted. So I ended up, like, again, going back to the beginning, I said I've always had an amazing relationship with my mum and my sister. But at that one time, I fell out with my mum. And because I fell out with my mum, my sister wouldn't speak to me either because she said I was being out of order. And so, at that point, I distanced myself from everybody. I was in full self-destruct mode. I started believing that I was supposed to die that day, and I cheated death. I dared leave the house because I thought if I go out, I'm going to die, or whoever's with me is going to get hurt. I was having to have cortisol injections in my elbows so I could move my arms.
Yeah.
And my dad come to pick me up to go and get injections. And I dared leave the house. I didn't want him to be involved in a crash or anything. So I made sure that I had a drink before he came so that we couldn't go. So I had to stay in the house.
Was there any? Oh my gosh, there's so many different questions here. There's so many different questions. I'm just thinking about what work was saying and what did they do for you? What support did they offer you?
They didn't offer anything. They said if I need out to let them know, but I didn't know that I needed anything. And I just knew that when I'd gone to see doctors and gone back to the hospital and gone to physio, they just kept saying, you can't go back to work yet. You can't go back to work yet. So I didn't know when I was going to get back to work and start earning money again. And that's what made me sink even deeper. I've worked out since I was 16, but I was told that I'll never ever lift weights again because of the damage I'd done to my arms. So that played massively on my mental health. I ended up, the amount that I was drinking compared to normal and eating and not moving because I couldn't do anything, within about 12 weeks, I'd put on about 1.5 stone. I'd put on loads of weight. I was overweight. And again, all of that just massively played with my mental health.
Was there a time when you contemplated suicide?
Yeah. I started believing that I cheated death and I was supposed to die and death was going to come for me, like the film Final Destination.
Yeah.
Like, you cheat death, but it keeps coming. That's where my head was. It was coming. And I started thinking, because of the way I was with Katie and the boys, and I was either up or I was down, I was angry, I was shouting. I started thinking that they'd have all been better off if I had have died that day. So why am I waiting for death to come to me? Why don't I just do it? But I didn't want to end my life in a way where anybody had found me, because I knew that I'd then put that trauma on them for the rest of their lives.
Okay, so did you have a plan?
My plan was the Humber Bridge, which is local to us. It's a local suicide.
Yeah.
So people jump the bridge, and then the majority of the time they're not found because they either get lost in the mud or they get washed out into the North Sea.
Yes.
And to me, that's what I needed to do, because then I could just disappear. Yeah, they're going to be upset, but they'll get over it over a period of time. But if somebody actually found me, that's going to traumatize them, and I couldn't do that to anybody. So 2 occasions, drunk, like pissed out my head, I got in my car and drove to the bridge. The first time I got there, and I just sat in my car and I thought, what are you doing? You know, like, you can't do this. And I ended up turning around, going home. Katie had not even noticed I'd been out, I don't think. The second time I went, this was it. This is when it's going to happen. And I sat and I thought about it, and I just cried in my car for, I couldn't even put a time how long, because I don't know. I was just in my car for a very long time. And having known what it feels like to be trapped underwater and drowned, I just didn't have the balls to do it. I couldn't get out my car. I couldn't do it. And I ended up turning around and going home. And when I walked in, Katie was screaming at me and saying, where you been? Like, what you doing? And
she knew.
I couldn't tell her where I'd been.
But she knew.
Yeah, so we're arguing. And then she, in that moment, gave me an ultimatum. She said, Steve, you either you either ring a doctor and get help, or you pack a bag and leave, because we can't carry on like this. It's not fair on me. It's not fair on the boys. It's not fair on you. But I didn't see that I had a problem in the middle of all this. You know, like, looking back now, I can see it massively. But at that time, I just thought it'll pass. I'll be all right. But I didn't think I had mental health problems or mental health issues at that time. So I didn't need a doctor. So I went upstairs and I started packing a bag to leave. But as I was packing my bag, I had a flashback again. I'm trapped underwater and I'm praying to God, please, please, please don't let me die. I can't leave my kids. And then it all hit me. Everything that I'd been planning, everything that I'd been going through. I was about to leave my kids, and that was the one. I asked God to let me live, to be with my boys.
Yeah.
And I was going against all that. And I had a full-on breakdown. I fell to the floor. I was crying my eyes out. Katie came upstairs, the boys came upstairs. They were all hugging me and holding me. I was having what I can only call a panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything. I was choking on my own tears. And then Katie rang a doctor, and the doctor came out. He took one look at me and he said, Steve, he said, I'm a psychologist, I'm a GP, but I can tell you, you've got PTSD, you've got anxiety, you've got depression. He said, I'm going to get you an appointment and at Victoria House, which is a local mental health hospital. So I'm going to get you an appointment there and we're going to get you help. Now I started laughing at him and I said, guys like me don't get PTSD. You get that in the army. You know, like that's what I associated PTSD with, was in the forces, seeing what they see at war. And he explained to me and said, no, anybody who's gone through trauma can suffer with post-traumatic stress.
Absolutely.
And the next day I went to Victoria House and I sat with a therapist and I told her everything I've just told you, but in a lot more detail. And she sat with a tear in her eye and she said, I'm really sorry, Steve, I ain't qualified enough to help you. She said, I can't help you. She said, I'm going to speak to a colleague and we'll get back in touch. And then sent me away. And my dad had driven me there. Now, on the way back home, I said to my dad, stop at garage. And he stopped at garage. And I went in and I got a cheap bottle of vodka on my credit card. And he was like, what you got that for? I said, I need a drink. He dropped me off. I walked in. Katie saw the bottle and just looked away and walked away. I went straight upstairs and I sat with that bottle. And I remember I must have drank it within about 5 minutes, just this full bottle of vodka. And with every mouthful that I was drinking, I was crying into it, wishing not to wake up. I just didn't want to wake up. And I must have drank the bottle and then just fell asleep, passed out. And then Katie woke me up the following afternoon. I'd slept right through. And she was like, come on, you've got to go back to Victoria House. Another therapist wants to see you. And I went back and I sat with a lady and she explained everything. She said, she just smiled when I told her everything, she smiled and she said, everything you're going through is completely normal and
100%.
I can help you and I'm going to help you. 100%. The second she said that was like a big heavy rucksack had just been lifted off my back. When she told me I was normal and everything I was going through was normal and she could help me, that relief was immense. And I sat with that lady twice a week for 4 months. And I ain't saying it was all brilliant. It was through the NHS. And some of the sessions, once my hour was up, I could be in a really dark place and she'd say, right, got to go now. Your session's over. See you next week or see you on Thursday. And I'd leave in a worse place than I was when I walked in. But on my last session, when my quota was up, she said, right, Steve, there's a prescription for some antidepressants. And I said, I don't want it. I'd refused them right from the beginning because of the stigma around them. Like, once you get on them, you'll never get off them. So I refused them. But she said, take it as a backup. She said, but what I want you to do is when you leave here, don't go to your local pub for a pint. She said, I want you to go home. I want you to get your laptop out. And I want you to start learning about the mind. I want you to start learning about mental health. I want you to start learning about mindfulness. And I started laughing at her and I said, mindfulness. I said, that's all that fucking meditation and all that shit, innit? I said, that's not for me, that. I said, I ain't doing that. But she'd planted a seed. And when I got home, I did go straight home and I got my computer out. And the first thing I started reading about and watching videos on YouTube on was spirituality. And I started believing that I've got a guardian angel. Somebody's looked over me all my life. And the more I kind of read on that, the more I believed it. I'm not a religious person as such, but I do believe in a higher power. There's something. And that's where once I started believing in something, that then gave me the strength to believe in myself again. And once I kind of found my self-worth and got my confidence back, because I went from being the most confident guy I knew to having no confidence at all.
Yes.
Once I built all that back up, I then just carried on learning. I started learning about meditation. I started practicing meditation. I was doing breath work 12 years ago before we even heard as much of it as we do now. I was getting cold showers because, again, that's all comes with mindfulness. And it all really, really worked for me. I then went on, I came across self-hypnosis, and I'd get nice and relaxed, and I'd put myself back into the trauma. So I put myself back into the water. So instead of panicking and screaming and praying to God, please, please, I can't die, that was still triggering my PTSD, even as time went on, like a couple of years later. But what I started practicing was, I learned that I can control my mind. The mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. So I started putting myself back into that trench, back underwater, but instead of screaming and crying for my life and shouting for the kids, I sat like a Buddhist monk underwater. This is in my imagination. And I tell myself, you're all right, you get through it. And I took myself back to that trauma, and I told myself, you're all right, you get through it. And for me, that really, really worked. And over a period of time, the more I learned, I wanted to know more about hypnosis. So I studied all the old hypnotherapists and practiced, went on a couple of courses, studied hypnotherapy for about 5 years. So I'm a certified hypnotherapist, studied NLP, neuro-linguistics, studied CBT. And with all this learning, I was still working on sites. I was off work for 7 months, but then I went back, and then I was just back in construction for a few years. But I found myself helping people. Like, people had just opened up to me about the mental health, and I was giving them tools and techniques that had helped me to then help them. And as time went, I could be in a supermarket and somebody, like, I'm not very approachable. I've got a bald head and tattoos, and I'm quite big. But yeah, people don't just want to come over to me because I may not look like the friendliest of people. But once they get talking to me and they learn who I am, they just open up. And I was helping more and more people. And then someone said to me, you should do this as a business. And I said, what do you mean? And they was like, just coach people. You've done loads of training. You're a trained hypnotherapist. You've done everything. Turn it into a business. But having leaving school with no qualifications or anything, I ain't gone to college. I ain't been to business school. I thought, well, I can't just set up a business. But then I went home and got my computer out and realised that I can't. And I just went on Company House and I set up Steve Kirby Life Coach UK, SK Life Coach UK. The following day, I set up a generic website. I got a business account and I started putting posts on my social media. I set up a LinkedIn account. Just my goal was not to help everybody, but I know that guys in construction don't want to go for therapy.
Well, you know this as well in terms of the suicide rates in construction. It's gone up from 507 to 759.
Yeah.
To 759, nearly 2 a day in the construction industry.
That's 2 a day. And then last year, 2023 to 2024, 138 people were killed at work across all sectors as well, because of accidents and incidents. Some of them was the public. Some of them were just people walking past the site and something hit them and killed them. So on top of the 700 plus suicide, you've got 138 people that are dying because of safety. And my goal was to coach guys within construction, guys who didn't want to go for therapy but could speak to somebody that they could relate to. Somebody who'd gone through it all, somebody who'd done what they've done and lived through it. But then I got asked by Scanscale, which are a massive company, their safety guy saw one of my posts and I'd put a bit about the accident, and he said, am I right in seeing that you survived an 18-bar pressure test failure? And I said, yeah. He said, how? I said, I don't know, I'm lucky. He said, will you come to our office in London, in Rickmansworth, and share your story with our safety team? He said that same year, 3 months after your incident, we lost somebody, and that's the guy who died at Free Bar. He said, I did the investigation. I had to work with the HSE and I had to speak to the guy's family. He said, there's many lessons we can learn from you having survived it. So I went in and I shared my story with 12 management, and there was all sat gobsmacked, a bit like you was when I first started saying it. And I didn't understand it because I didn't know how big or bad everything was. And then they said, right, we've got a safety stand down at Leicester Stadium. There's going to be like 450 people there split up into 3 groups. He said, will you go and share your story with them? And I was like, I can't do that. I can't stand in front of 150 people. He's like, honestly, he said, you could help a lot of people. And I remember I didn't sleep the night before at all, knowing I had to present this story. And I remember driving down to Leicester, and on the way, I nearly talked myself out of it. I was like, I can't do this. But then the life coach in me, because I'm now a life coach. So I was thinking, if one of my clients was given an opportunity, but they didn't do it because of the scared stand there, because of fear, I'd be pushing them on. I'd be like, come on, you can do it. You know, like, ask yourself. So I had a bit of a coaching battle in my own head. And I went and I did it. And my talk back then was about half an hour, 25 minutes, half an hour, because it was just the accident. But everybody was talking about it. I had guys opening up about self-medicating afterwards. I had guys talking to me about the mental health. So sharing my story encouraged other people to open up about their own. And then it just grew. Well, it grew a little bit, and then COVID hit. So I didn't do nothing for 2 years. And now it's just grown again. But I travel the UK, or I travel Europe, sharing not just the accident, but I talk about mental health in a really passionate, deep way. I open up fully about my own mental health, my journey. And I talk about the importance of reporting, having now knowing that they're covered all that up. Because if that accident had have been reported by the HSE, what I was involved in, then potentially the guy 3 months ago might have survived.
Absolutely.
Because the HSE had put a briefing out across the UK about that incident. So they might have done things differently, and he might still be here today. So a big part of my message and my story is we've got to communicate. If we don't report something, we don't learn from it. And that's why I now do what I do. So I am a life coach. I help people not just who are suffering with depression or anxiety, but addiction and anything that comes with well-being, really. But I also travel the country speaking to different businesses, different organizations about the importance of communicating. And then when I do a presentation, anyone within that presentation, if they open up to me about their own mental health, I will then offer them free coaching as part of that day. So as I said, I don't feel like I work no more because I'm doing what I am passionate about.
Absolutely.
And that's, to me, when we said earlier, everything happens for a reason. If none of this would have happened, I wouldn't be who I am and doing what I'm doing today.
Absolutely. We had Craig Patton, health and safety guy. You've come across him, have you?
Yeah, I know Craig.
Okay. And, we was talking about similar things in terms of the construction industry. For me, as a bricklayer, I still feel that there's still that machismo, that macho-ness within the construction industry about not taking mental health seriously, about not implementing and putting in more stringent procedures, safety procedures there. Everybody wants to cut corners, and I'm not saying that's right across the board in the construction industry, but I do know that I see builders locally, and they're not part of any big firms, and they're cutting corners because it saves money.
What I talk about in my presentation, as humans, if we can save time or money, we will take that risk. So if we can save time or money, the majority of us will take a risk and we will cut corners. And sometimes as we do that, we tell ourselves, it'll be all right. It'll be okay. If we're having to tell ourselves it'll be okay, it'll be all right, whether that's doing something physical or whether that's our mental health, if in our own mind we're saying to ourselves, it'll be all right, that's a red flag. That's your instinct telling you to stop. Stop what you're doing, step back, and just think, what is worst case scenario?
And at the same time, when we're saying it'll be all right, we're actually minimizing and reducing our own self-worth and our own value.
Yeah, definitely. But none of us believe it'll happen to us.
It's the next person.
Yeah,
It's the next person.
People hear about accidents and incidents and breakdowns and all, but I'll be all right. That never happened to me. Now, again, part of what I share is it doesn't matter how mentally tough you believe you are or how physically strong or hard you think you are as a person. The brain is very, very delicate.
100%.
And your mental health, no matter who you think you are, can be demolished in a moment. And you've got to realize that. And if you're not feeling okay and you're not talking about it as a guy, because we don't like to talk about it, you're not releasing those emotions, and it's just going to build up and build up and build up. And no matter how tough you think you are, it will break you. And that's why we have to talk. We have to reach out. And I feel for a lot of guys as well, because when it comes to emotions, a lot of us guys don't know how to express ourselves in that kind of way. So it can come across aggressive.
Yes.
And a guy might be trying to get his frustrations and talk, but then he gets shot down because he's shouting or raising his voice. And then that's it. It's going to shut up.
Yes.
We need to be able to learn how to talk about our emotions, but express ourselves in a way where we don't have to hide. You know what I mean? We can get it out there, and we're not going to be frowned upon.
I'm going to jump in and ask you, because this has been, your story is a powerful story without a doubt, and more people need to listen to it, need to hear it, need to understand it. Who is the most important person in your life?
That is a tough one. So
you can only pick one.
I can only pick one.
Yes.
Then if the world was going to explode and I had to just keep hold of one person, then can I say my little pet dachshund?
we've got a dog. What's the dachshund's name?
I've got two. I've got Pebbles and Pluto.
Well, which one are you going to Pluto, or are you going to the beach?
I'll say Pluto. But okay. No, I think Harry, my lad, my biological lad, I see a lot of him. I'm really, really close to him. He's my world.
Okay.
Joe, he's early 20s now. I don't see as much of him, and he can be a bit of a little shit.
Yeah, of course.
So obviously, I can't pick between them, just to keep one of them. My mum is my world.
Okay.
And I'm married. Again, another story. This podcast could go on forever and ever, but me and Katie.
We're going to get you back. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. No, I was with a girl when I was 16, and she told me she was 15, but it turns out she wasn't. And after about a year of being together, it was a birthday, and it was a 15th birthday, but I thought she was already 15. And I'd been waiting for her, and I was full of testosterone, and I couldn't do anything because I'd get arrested, or a stepdad would get me arrested.
Yeah.
So we ended up ending the relationship. And then I remember saying to her, look, if we both found ourselves single in our 40s, we should get married. And she said, pinky promise. And I said, pinky promise. We never saw each other for 20 plus years. We wasn't friends on Facebook. We just had no association with each other whatsoever. And then I left Katie a few years ago. Amicably, the boys had grown up, and we was like brother and sister. And I said, look, it's not working. I found myself back at my mum's in a single bed until I got myself sorted. And I've got a Facebook business page, and it said, George is like your business page. And I thought, George? And I clicked on it, and it was Georgina, my girlfriend from when I was 16. So I messaged her and said, wow, that's a blast from the past. How are you doing? And she said, yeah, I'm really, really good. She's gone through her own story. And we ended up meeting up. And now we're married. We got married in October last year.
Congrats.
So she is my absolute world. So again, it's a very horrible, difficult question, that one.
Okay. Well, let me give you the answer. Did you say Pebbles?
Pebbles and Pluto.
And Pluto, okay. And Harry was there in the shout and all of that, and your mum, etc. But the answer is you.
Yeah, but I thought I was going to survive anyhow.
But the question was, who's the most important person in your life?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that.
Hindsight's a good thing, isn't it?
Hindsight's magical. But that is what, to all of my clients, that is the one thing that I try and get through to them. They've got to love themselves. They've got to believe in themselves. If 100%. They don't look after themselves, they're not going to be able to look after other people.
Spot on.
And so, as a coach, I thought about saying that, but then I thought, where's he going with this one? But no,
just straight down the line.
And you are 100%. I mean, it is you. It is me. You've got to look after yourself.
It's true. Stephen, Kirby, it's been a bloody pleasure. And absolutely, and I hope to God that we have you back soon for part 2. I want to hear about Steve and Georgie's love interest, I think, part 2.
Yeah, well, I said that to her when we was kids, but I've always said, I never married Katie. I always said I'll never get married. I don't believe in it. Mum and dad got divorced. Everyone I know who's got married is divorced. I thought, what's the point? It's a bit of paper. But the second I met George and we saw each other again after all that time, it was like all them feelings from being a teenager came back, and I just knew there was going to be nobody else. I didn't know how she felt, but I knew there was nobody else. Thankfully, she felt the same, and I knew I had to marry her.
You're blessed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for an enjoyable podcast.
Thank you. It's been great.
The Hurt Locker is a safe space for our guests to openly share their mental health experiences. If you have been affected by any of the content in this recording, then please reach out for support. If it is an emergency, dial 999. If you would like to talk to somebody today, then please call the Samaritans on 116 123. Stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Hurt Locker. Please give us a rating or share with another listener. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Hurt Locker Pod.